Mr. Pashinyan, welcome to Arabiya. Thank you for your time. How dangerous is the situation in Karabakh today, especially that you called after for an overall military and also public preparedness?
I would like to speak about the level of danger in the region. The danger of the situation for Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenia is clear, but I think it's very important that your viewers have the correct understanding of why the war is happening and what the context is. First off, we need to acknowledge this war would not have happened without Turkey's intervention. It's now obvious and proven that Turkey recruited mercenaries and terrorists and transported them from Syria to Azerbaijan to unleash the offensive. Secondly, this war has become the continuation of the Turkish-Azerbaijani joint military exercise that began in August and basically did not end up until the start of the war, and some Turkish military presence continued in Azerbaijan at the time of the start of the war, essentially taking part in the war. It's very important to note and to acknowledge why all of this is of interest to Turkey. And I think we need to view all of this in the frameworks of the expansionist policy that Turkey is carrying out in the Mediterranean Sea, in Libya, Syria, Iraq. And this is basically an attempt, a policy of reinstating, restoring the Ottoman Empire. And I believe that this policy should be harshly, strictly stopped by the international community. Otherwise, it contains the same threats as those to the countries of the Mediterranean, the Arab world, to the South Caucasus, and to Europe. I've said it a number of times to European television and media in my interviews that if in Europe they fail to properly assess the situation, then they should wait for Turkey near Vienna. This holds true for all directions. Unless this situation is properly assessed by the international community, then we will, in the near future, see a manifestation of Turkey's imperialist policies. We are now seeing it in the South Caucasus. We will next see it to the north of us, to the east of us, to the southeast, and towards the south. So this is a greater situation, a wider situation, in the depth of which really lies Turkey's wish to restore the Ottoman Empire and Turkey's ambition to do so.
You accuse Baku of being assisted by mercenaries through Turkey, and also of what you said. What's your response to accusations of the Armenian side that calling for assistance from Arabs from Armenian roots all over the world to come and fight? What differs from mercenaries?
Well, first of all, that is not happening here. This is not something which is happening. And secondly, there are citizens of Armenia, citizens of the Republic of Armenia, who are working or living in some foreign country. And in this situation, because of this situation, they are returning to defend their homeland. And there are people with Karabakh origins who live abroad, and they are coming back to defend their homeland. But I must tell you, this is not a phenomenon at any significant scale that would be seen as anything of significant scale. If it is occurring, and it may be happening, and I don't preclude, but I preclude that anything else would be happening beyond that.
Now, Mr. Pashinyan, what's your vision now on resolution end of this conflict?
Well, first of all, the fighting has to stop. With the ongoing hostilities, it is hard to conceive any diplomatic solution. Next, there should be substantive negotiations on resolution, just as it was contemplated in the Moscow statement dated October 10, which was adopted between the foreign affairs ministers of Armenia, Russia, and Azerbaijan.
What would convince really Armenia to sit and negotiate this time?
We have always been ready to negotiate. We are always ready to negotiate. We have always been ready for mutual concessions. The problem is elsewhere. Anytime any concession or mutual concession becomes acceptable for Armenia, for Azerbaijan, it becomes no longer acceptable. Think of it this way. I can give you the example of Kazan in 2011, when you may know, for the Armenian side, one of the key issues is the recognition of the right to self-determination and status of Nagorno-Karabakh. But in 2011, in the so-called Kazan process, the Armenian side had agreed to interim status of Karabakh, not final status, just interim status. So, something of a lowering of our initial bar with the logic of achieving compromise, but at the last moment, Azerbaijan refused to accept that compromise and came up with more demanding conditions on the Armenian side. So this is the process that does not allow, has not to date allowed to achieve diplomatic solution.
Mr. Pashinyan, President Donald Trump, he declared that they have, as America, United States of America, they have good terms and special terms with the Armenians, and they will help them. How?
I cannot comment that statement, those statements, you see, because the statements made by President Trump, those statements will need to be followed by more detailed proposals and proposed actions so that I am in a position to comment. The fact that Armenians in the United States are very visible and a very influential and potent force is understandable, but what exactly the actions and support will be from the United States to this process remains to be seen.
Mr. Pashinyan, one of your tweets, you tweeted that the claims of Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh have no base in international law and requested also recognition as part of Armenian history, as mentioned in the tweet. What international frame and law you are basing your request?
It is very important that we know the history of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. 2 days ago, or 1 day ago, something very important occurred. Unfortunately, in many cases, there are attempts to present the Karabakh issue as a territorial dispute, meaning a dispute with two sides, and one side saying, this is about land, the other side saying, this land is ours, and one side saying, no, that land is ours. But in reality, this conflict is not about those claims. So very importantly, the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, said 2 days ago in his statement at the Valdai Club that this is not a territorial dispute. It did not come about as a territorial dispute. It came about as an ethnic conflict. As the history of the conflict has been quite long, the international community often tends to lose the origin and how the story really began, how the Karabakh issue really began. And the Karabakh issue at the current stage began in 1988, when in the Soviet Union there was a process of democratization. At such time, there used to be the autonomous district of Nagorno-Karabakh, the population of which was 80% Armenian. And the Armenians of the autonomous district of Nagorno-Karabakh exercising the process of, or benefiting from the process of democratization of the Soviet Union, decided to speak up about their violated rights. Now, you may ask what these violated rights were. At the time when the Soviet Union was being formed in the 1920s, in this region in Nagorno-Karabakh, which was over 80% Armenian populated, was incorporated not in Soviet Armenia, but in Soviet Azerbaijan by arbitrary decision of Stalin. The Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh, the parliament of the autonomous district of Nagorno-Karabakh, decided to raise this issue in an absolutely peaceful political process to claim resolution of the status issue, to which the Soviet Union and Soviet Azerbaijan responded with violence and force. And that violence and force was first demonstrated in the Azerbaijani towns of Sumgait and Baku in the form of pogroms and killings and violence against the Armenians. That was the first phase of the conflict, which the second phase occurred as the Soviet Union was collapsing. According to the then Soviet rules, if a Soviet republic gained independence, autonomous units within it, such as the autonomous district of Nagorno-Karabakh, had the right to determine their status, because they together had joined the Soviet Union. They had together been incorporated, not together been incorporated, but they had personality, legal personality within the Soviet Union. So when Azerbaijan declared its independence, Nagorno-Karabakh in turn declared its independence. And just like, or with the same logic as Azerbaijan gained independence from the Soviet Union, with exactly the same logic, Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous District gained independence from the Soviet Union and from Soviet Azerbaijan. And yes, up to today, this fact has not been recognized by the international community, this fact of gaining independence. And the reason for this conflict, or the essence of the struggle, is about that. The Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh are fighting for their right to be recognized by the international community. This is the whole story. But it's very important to understand the reasons and the consequences and the causality of this gaining of independence. The Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh strived for independence not because they simply so wanted, but because, as part of Azerbaijan, they faced an existential threat. And the manifestation of that threat was initially, or firstly, a cultural genocide. After the 1988 peaceful process, there was violence. Then after 1991, there was a full military attack. And today we are seeing that towns and villages of Karabakh are rocket-shelled. And to everyone it is obvious that the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh, let me underline, always 80+% of the population of Nagorno-Karabakh were Armenian. This population cannot survive, cannot exist as a part of Azerbaijan. They cannot exist in Azerbaijan. And with these events, as we see the use of terrorists and terrorist methods against Nagorno-Karabakh, this is yet another argument, another fact, confirming why Nagorno-Karabakh should have the right to independence. In international law, this is termed as remedial cessation.
Based on what you've said, Mr. Prime Minister, how do you respond this time to Azerbaijan's claims on wanting to liberate, using the word liberate, Karabakh or Artsakh?
And that's exactly what I said. The word should be understood as a clean Karabakh of the Armenians, which is a direct threat of genocide. And that's why we say, and that this once again proves, that Karabakh under Azerbaijani control would mean Karabakh without Armenians, which is tantamount to, which is equal to a genocide. And that's why I think, especially more now than ever, we should apply the principle of remedial cessation, cessation for salvation for Nagorno-Karabakh.
Azeri's president, he mentioned that their army just took over control some villages at the borders. What do you say in that?
There are hostilities, very heavy fighting happening. Azerbaijan's army has had some progress, but the people of Nagorno-Karabakh and the defense army of Nagorno-Karabakh are heroically fighting for their security and intend to struggle till the end.
Mr. Prime Minister, also why there are the claims that the current conflict this time, it's not about the disputed land and the traditional conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia, it's about gas. What do you say in that?
Gas definitely has no primary significance here. That's just an attempt by certain forces to portray this conflict as that. Now, let me tell you why they are doing it. Gas, sometimes they try to add a religious connotation, sometimes a territorial connotation. Why do they do this? To distract attention from the actual essence of the conflict. And this is very important, you see. In answering your questions, I keep trying to say we should focus on the essence of the conflict, what it's really about. Because to cure any problem, it's necessary to diagnose it correctly. Why do they say territorial dispute? Why do they say gas conflict? Why do they say sometimes religious conflict? To distract attention from the actual substance, because when the substance is not diagnosed correctly, when it's not perceived correctly, then the problem doesn't get solved. So this is done by those forces which are not interested in the essence and in the solution of the problem. They want to disfigure the reality so that they can cater to their own interests. Gas is not relevant here at all.
So if we're going to focus on the essence of this conflict, until when this conflict will continue and how it should end?
The OSCE Minsk Group co-chairs are doing their best to stop the hostilities and the violence. However, again, we need to understand the essence here. While representatives of Armenia and Azerbaijan, together with representatives of the OSCE Minsk Group co-chair countries, were discussing the potential ceasefire, Turkey, from the very outset, has been saying it thinks Azerbaijan should not stop the fighting. And with this, it's confirmed once again. And this is not the only fact, there are other facts as well. It proves once again that Turkey is the one who is inflaming this conflict more, and plus the presence of terrorists in the region. It is not by coincidence that there are now countries which are seeing this sequence for stopping the violence, removing the terrorists and mercenaries from the region, and curbing Turkey's involvement and participation in this conflict. Otherwise, we will not be able to achieve results.
Mm-hmm. And also observers ask, does Armenia have so many proof regarding the military equipment and also the support through mercenaries to Baku from Turkey?
I will just give you two pieces of evidence so that we don't go into too much detail. First of all, the European Court of Human Rights, based on an application by Armenia, proven that Turkey is engaged in this process and applied an interim measure Secondly, on the presence of mercenaries, statements have been made by the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Russian Federation, France, and a number of other countries on the level of their official representatives, and the United States of America as well. And in the internet, there are materials, public materials, which prove all of this. Armenia, in turn, has a ready-made package of evidence that we collected and shared with our international counterparts. We can also provide it to you.
Please allow me to ask you the final question. What are your closing words to both Azeris and Armenians?
My closing words are what I said after I became Prime Minister. We need to find a solution to the Karabakh issue which will be acceptable to the people of Azerbaijan, the people of Armenia, and the people of Karabakh.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Yes,